Welcome to Success Authorities Conversation Street with Leadership Authority Peter Beaumont and with Business Culture Authority Ronn Lehmann and me, Linda Ruhland, Success Authorities founder.
We have a lot of manager training and manager to be training. We actually have people, we have a monthly 60-minute kind of the progression of becoming a people manager curriculum and we invite people that aren't managers currently but want to be to join. That way maybe it's not such a big leap when they finally make that switch. Mm-hmm. So, but it's all the way from approving time cards to discipline to, mental health, all kinds of things that you don't have to think about when you're not a people manager.
Yeah. And I think that, well, that's great that you're preparing people for what the job's actually going to be, because that's always the biggest surprise, I think, when people move into leadership roles is how much of their time is spent with people and how those people, we humans don't, like guitar strings, we don't stay in tune.
Yeah.
So it's ongoing and it never quite stops. And, but it's, on the other hand, it can be more rewarding for some people, that they see people that have developed and people that they can look at and say, I helped them and I've built this great team. But it's a different, as you say, it's a real different way of looking at it. And speaking of people, here's Peter Beaumont. So let me tell you what we've already talked about.
Probably, yes. All right.
We talked about ESOPs. We've talked about people. We've touched on culture. We've talked about supply chain issues briefly.
Very briefly, yeah.
So that's where we are.
Oh, well, okay. It looks like you covered it. Well, thanks ever so much for all covering. I'll see you in a. My apologies to all of you, especially Tony. I was facilitating something and it ran on far too long than it should have done, and I couldn't just bail out. So
no problem.
Good to see you, though.
We hardly missed you, Peter. By the way,
we've solved world peace while you were gone. So
yeah.
I get this at home too. Sorry, I'm late, everybody. What? Oh, are you coming home anyway?
No, you're early for the next one.
Exactly. So, Tony, are you in your office or at home?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I'm back about 4+ days a week. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So that does. You may have covered this already. Are you bringing people back in, or what's happening?
So when all the restrictions were lifted, well, let's just say a year and a half ago, for the most part, everybody came back. Our big, ironically, one of our challenges is we're running out of space. So we kind of were encouraging people that don't have to be in the office every day to consider having a home office. So a lot of our salespeople that maybe had at least a desk that we'd see them once every 2 weeks now maybe don't have a desk, but we're pretty much tapped out where we're at. We probably added 30 or 40 people in the last 2 years, and
wow.
Not all of them are in the office, but so we give people an option to work virtually if it makes sense. There are some positions that we just said it needs to be here, and some teams that need to be here together. But we'll have some customer service people that are all across the country. Project managers that for the most part are here. But we also say, if you want to work at home on Monday or Friday, that's fine too. Just make sure you're available. So we don't have any hard and fast rules. It kind of comes down to a space issue for us.
So do you mandate people coming in? It sounds like you don't, but for certain days for meetings or not?
Yeah, I mean the written or unwritten rule we have is that you can work from home, but if we need you to be in for a team meeting or whatever, but we're also, one of the biggest things is, here we are talking on a video and it's like we're sitting across the table from each other, and we can do that now. And
yeah.
it's, there are, ironically, there are times when we've had meetings on video that everybody's in the office, or maybe one person isn't. And so we all just sit in our office. It's just as effective typically. You can share screens. So I remember when we first started, when everybody first went out in 2020 or whatever it was, and we did the first Teams meeting. If it was an hour meeting, we'd spend probably 20 minutes trying to get everything to work.
Yes.
So, Ron, I can't hear you. Peter, I can see you, but I can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Yeah, you're muted.
Or not muted. That was another thing. You hear people, talking to their cat. And,
your kid
we
is
all had
cute,
to get good at it.
Yeah, your kid is cute, but send him away so we can get our business done here, okay?
It's.
Do
but I think people are more comfortable with it now. And in some cases, it's really convenient, especially for a short conversation.
Right.
And the amount of, just commute time and stuff like that, it can be really effective, but there's nothing like being face to face either.
Yeah. Well, in all seriousness, we do have handbook rules that, if you're going to have a home office, it can't be sitting at your kitchen table with your 1 and 3-year-old in the background. And, it's great that you're able to stay home, but you're home working and not being, the daycare.
Yeah, that's
so
a job.
we literally require people to have, a spare bedroom or an office or downstairs or someplace where, that they can stay focused. And granted, we're reasonable enough. If you got to get up and do something, that's fine. You don't need to sit there for 8 hours. You wouldn't do that at work either. So
do you supply guidelines? Did you say, Tony?
Yeah, nothing strict. It's just, but kind of what I said, it was literally, it needs to be a dedicated spot, where you can shut the door and have privacy, or you're set off, in your house or whatever, because sitting at the kitchen table when the kids are running around and you got the neighbors knocking on the door or whatever, doesn't work, So we have it's probably a paragraph that just says we need to have a dedicated spot. We supply all the technology. Most people have 2 screens at least, and a laptop and a docking station, and printer if they need one. Whatever. We supply all that. Most people, if they have an office here, have 2 work stations. One at home and one here.
Right.
Because it's not a 8 to 5 job every day.
So the magic question in that is accountability. So many people worry that they're going to lose people's hours to other things like parenting or who knows, maybe moonlighting. So how do you manage that and keep everybody at peace about the fact that everybody's working regardless of where they are?
Right. I think it just comes down to trust. We kind of have expectations of what people need to get done, and they either get it done or they don't. You need to be reasonably available for your colleagues and your customers and stuff. But on the other hand, if you don't necessarily deal with people a lot and you've kind of got a individual contributor role, if you want to do it, from 9 to 7, I really don't care, as long as it doesn't negatively impact anybody else in the organization or our customers or our partners or whatever, which would obviously be a very much of an exception, because everybody needs to deal with somebody at times, and you need to be reasonably available. So you can figure out pretty quickly whether this person is online or not, and whether they're getting their work done. And if they miss deliverables or making mistakes or whatever, then maybe we got to talk about you being in the office till we get it back on track. So, but we don't have monitoring software or anything like that we do. So
no, thank goodness. I think that's very Big Brother-ish, and everybody's working out ways of getting around it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And plus, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you put something in there that makes people believe you don't trust them, then they won't return that trust, and it kind of spirals. And
exactly. And it's most of the people that work virtual are people that aren't in the area. We have some customer service people that live in rural Wisconsin, and, out in California or whatever. And it's nice because, now when we do recruiting for customer service, kind of the whole country's our oyster now. It's not, not like they have to live near Edina. They can be anywhere in the country in theory, as long as it's, follows the sun. We don't want somebody West Coast that's covering the East Coast or vice versa, but within reason, we can kind of go anywhere in the country.
Yeah, it's winding up the scope for companies. It's done the same with the one I'm working at here now, the client, where we've got somebody in New York now that we would never have hired before.
Right.
Never even thought about it.
Yeah.
So switching gears a bit, Tony, just there was a lot of talk about recession and, impending. Where's your head at in terms of that as CEO? Do you see a impending doom? Is that reflected in your business? What's your feeling about that?
In the critical power world, I wouldn't say it's completely recession proof, but it's, you got to keep the heat, light, and power on. You got to do maintenance on all your backup power. When a generator fails, you got to buy a new one. And when your batteries go out, you got to replace them and you got to maintain them. So, but, when COVID hit for us, our distribution business, which is the biggest part of our business, but it's all the small transactions. Those are the ones that for us could get delayed or deferred or even canceled. And, it doesn't shut down an operation for somebody, but our service business for the most part kept very busy. As long as they were able to still go out to a job site, they have to do their quarterly maintenance on batteries or on a generator or something. So for our business personally, and we've been hearing about a recession that's coming up next year. Right. And we've heard that every year for how many years now, even since COVID. Mm-hmm. And, depends on what your definition is of a recession. It kind of hasn't happened as extreme as we thought. So we don't necessarily plan in our business for a recession.
Okay.
I mean, in a lot of cases, if there's a recession, we look at it as a hiring opportunity, because if people are laying off good people, we'll take them. It's you never want to miss a good recession for hiring good people if they're getting laid off. And it's only just it's just a numbers game. So we haven't gotten to that point, with a recession, since I've been around here anyway. But we're not in fear of it, and some parts of it, like during COVID, our distribution with business was down pretty significantly, but everybody else was up or flat. And that's all we could ask for. So we're pretty diverse, in what we do. So if one business unit is down, the rest may pick it up. So it's, we don't live in fear of a recession, but we're always thinking ahead, what happens if business contracts, what are the 3 things we have to do? We do a lot of contingency planning.
You mentioned what I think is a really interesting mindset, Tony, that looking at opportunity within recession, where sort of the other side of that is organizations that hunker down and do those. They stop growing or stop looking for opportunities, and they just try and protect what they have. And I think that's an interesting, there's 2 ways to look at everything. And it sounds like what you guys do is you look for the opportunity within that. And contingency planning is really about that to a certain extent, of not only protecting yourself, but saying, what opportunities might arise. Mm-hmm. If everyone else is kind of hunkering down, it's a great chance to go out there and possibly get some new business away from them, get people, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, it is, and obviously you have to be smart about it. You can't just go out and, when your sales are contracting, you go out and hire 25 people, but we're always looking for technicians. I mean, even if we don't say we need one here or here, when a good one shows up, we will work pretty hard to hire them. Or, if we're, when we were in the midst of COVID, we got a really large contract in one of our divisions, and we hired, gosh, probably 6 or 8 technicians, some people in the in the support staff or whatever, and some of them, most people never met for about a year. So, because we weren't in the office, never met them in person. So, and obviously we got a big contract, but we probably hired as many people in the midst of COVID as we did, this year or last year, for different reasons. But, you have to be smart about it. But, it's, we're always looking for good people. And when we talked about earlier about internal career opportunities, maybe you can hire somebody to backfill that technician that wants to get out of the field and work into a project manager. So we hire a good level 4 technician to take their spot, and everybody moves up.
Yeah. Where do those folks come from? Where do those technicians come from?
Well, as I said, we use Core Talent for 100% of our recruiting, and they do a great job. So they've kind of got a pretty good network. We're starting, now that we have 150 people, we have a really good referral program, and we actually pay $2,000 for every referral that somebody brings in. If Joe says his neighbor wants to be a technician or a sales manager, and we hire that person, Joe gets a $2,000 bonus after 90 days. And in some cases, if it's a hard to fill job, we paid up to $4,000 for a referral. So there's getting to be more of those. And I think it's kind of a function of just now we got 150 people that are recruiters for us, but Core Talent does a really nice job. But, we also were starting to focus some efforts on military recruiting. We have a lot of military in our company. I think at one point it might even be more now, but a year ago we had about 25% of our workforce are military veterans. So myself and our HR manager and a couple other people have attended military career fairs. We post on all the military job boards. We have collateral material that is focused just on military veteran recruiting, and we celebrate the veterans that we have in our organization, because we have a lot of them. They're great workers. So there's a number of places it comes from, that.
And you kind of answered another question I had, was where does a potential technician get those initial job skills before they come to the company? And obviously the military, they may be trained in some of the things. Are there trade schools, community colleges? Is there a place that almost the old apprentice program for many trades? Is there anything like that? Or do you bring them in and train them up?
More the latter. We do DC power work and we do generator work. And we've actually talked a lot about generator trade schools, and there just aren't a lot of them. There's 2 of them that we know of for sure that are kind of in the upper Midwest where we are, but they're actually affiliated with particular companies. So it'd be tough for us to go in there and say, hey, come work for us, when somebody's probably paying their tuition from another company or a competitor or whatever. So, but what we look for in a lot of cases, like the generator group, we look for diesel mechanics or auto mechanics or something, just anybody that's mechanically inclined. Over time, we can teach them and train them, on safe ways to work on generators. And our DC power group, if they have any kind of electrical aptitude, whether they're an apprentice or not, they're fair game for what we do. And like I say, one of the things that we've talked about forever, but when the labor pool is so small, we've always talked about hiring all these entry level technicians, and then you coach them up, and hope they stay with you for 5, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. But there's just not as many young adults, male or female, that are going into the trades anymore. There just aren't. And I really don't know why. I mean, you could read 10 articles and you'll get 11 different opinions as to why the trades are diminishing like they are. But it is. I mean, we live it every day. That's
Yeah.
why referrals are so great for us. And we don't have a problem coaching up people, when they may not have a lot of experience.
Yeah. I know in
I
the
think
construction and mining industries, the two jobs that you can basically write your own ticket are mechanic and welder.
Yeah.
If you can do those two things, they'll just throw money at you because they just can't find them. And their kind of take on it, to add a 12th opinion, is that they're not getting those young people who grew up either working within a family business where they learned it or from a farm.
Mm-hmm.
One supervisor said, we're getting kids who worked at Red Lobster last week, and they're coming in, and we have to train them on working outdoors and safety and then the job. And he said and we do it because we can't find people, so we're trying to get that going, but it's very difficult.
Well, one of my colleagues, Dan, who leads our DC Power, he's our COO. One of the questions he always asks in an interview with a trades position is, "What do you like to do for fun?" And most of them say, "I build cars, I remodel cars, I build engines, I build computers," or whatever it might be. And that's the kind of aptitude that we want. They're just not afraid of it, and they want to learn, and they have that mechanical aptitude to work with their hands and problem solve. So I always thought that was interesting, that's one of the first questions he asks is, "What do you like to do for fun?" He doesn't lead them anywhere.
That's a great question.
yeah, it is good. Yeah, I like that. So, Tony, a thing that intrigues me is you mentioned contingency plans, and that's something I've actually built into what I work with clients in the US. It came out of COVID, really, to be honest, which was, we didn't have a plan for something like this to happen. So what is the worst scenario that can happen to our business now we're coming out of this, and what do we do about it? So and then probably a plan C, which sounds like you do the same thing. What's on your mind as to the biggest short-term issues that face you, and what are the longer-term issues that you're addressing?
Sure. Well, we've talked about a lot of them. We're still working on labor, supply chain, in critical power. Obviously, there's a lot of technology changes, battery technology changes. So one of the things, about 2 years ago, our board and our leadership team and our ESOP partners, our valuation and et cetera, got together and had an off-site strategic planning session, and we came up with what we called the Big Six initiatives, and two of them were kind of related. One was growth, and the other one was we call Think Tank. And so we have a group of our most forward-looking, creative, out-of-the-box thinkers that they've done a whole bunch of good things in the 2 years, but they get together and they talk about the changing technology and what are things that we're not doing today that we want to do tomorrow or may need to do tomorrow. And, so they've talked about things like hydrogen and lithium ion and, energy storage and solar and all kinds of stuff. And they usually come up with 2 or 3 per year, and then they'll kind of whittle it down to one. And then they focus their energies, and then they divide and conquer. They go out and do research on whatever the topic is. And they've come up with some really interesting ideas and, some businesses that we think may be evolving or we want to get into, for example. And so that group, it's a very formalized group to talk about what's coming. We also have a recruiting and retention is one of the Big Six initiatives, and we have a committee that gets together every 60 days for an hour or two, and it's a cross section of younger people that have been in the workforce for a lot longer, field people, sales, admin, whatever. And we just talk about, what are you guys seeing out there for recruiting, and why do people want to stay at a company like ours? What do we need to do differently? And I facilitate it, and I just take notes and listen, and they come up with some really great ideas, about, it's more than just paying more money to keep people.
Yeah.
People are looking for work-life balance. And so what can we do rather than just give them a raise? Because the competition down the street's just going to beat that by $1. And then we beat it by $1, and it's just an arms race. So what can we do to make people want to come to work here every day other than just a bigger paycheck, which obviously helps, but you can only do that so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Conversation Street. For more information or to schedule a private conversation with Success Authorities, email us at inquire@successauthorities.com.